Hey everybody, welcome to Wrestling with Cruises. I'm Alex Abrahantes, where I wrestle with cruise questions so that you don't have to. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is a cruise show which is all about great conversation, all about cruise tips, tricks, and all the latest news. And boy, has there been a lot of great news this past week for the cruise industry. And because of that, I had to make sure that I brought on today's show none other than a fellow cruise fanatic who loves all the latest cruise news, who loves cruising, and we just had to have this conversation because with so much late-breaking news, we wanted to make sure to share it with you and talk about all the excitement. Because yes, there is excitement. It's building. It feels like we're finally going to be able to get back to the sea and start cruising. So without further ado, let me bring him on in here. Robbie O'Malley, how are you, my friend? Uh-oh, you know what? I can't hear you. Here we go again. We had this
Oh, how
audio
about
issue
now?
before. Hey, we can hear you now. All right. How's
Okay,
it going?
perfect. All good.
Good, good. Well, really excited to have you back. So thanks so much for joining me here because there's just so much to talk about. And obviously, the big news is the fact that it seems like we might finally, after months and months and months of wishing we are all on cruise ships, right? We might finally be able to get back to sailing. This past week, the three main CEOs, the heads of Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian Cruise Line met with the Miami-Dade Tourism Board, and they had a very passionate conversation about how cruising should return. And we know that Frank Del Rio was really kind of the man that stuck out the most because he was extremely passionate in what he had to
Oh,
say.
yeah,
And he truly believes that we're ready, that NCL and Royal Caribbean, who have been working together, have really done a lot to prepare for this new life that we're currently leading in this COVID world. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Let's start chatting about about what went down in Miami.
yeah. So, like you said, you have to give a big props to Frank Del Rio, who is the CEO of the parent company of Norwegian. He was really passionate about what he was talking about. And, he said things such as, enough is enough, and
Yep.
that if airlines are flying and are not contracting COVID at high rates, if any, how
Right.
can you contract as much COVID or even any COVID on a 200,000 plus gross ton cruise ship? There's so much room.
Yeah, exactly. And it made perfect sense. So when I heard that, I was like, wow, you know what? He brings up a great point. He's like, the airlines are still able to function, and you're sitting,
Mhm.
4 inches next to someone in a middle row. How are you going to tell me that that's actually safer than being on a cruise ship that has tons of space, right? And Norwegian
Absolutely.
and Royal have been putting together this plan to make sure that the passengers are safe, that there's social distancing, that there's all sorts of new cleaning methods, and it all starts from the moment that you arrive. So there's a lot of great things that they put into place. So why aren't they allowed to sail?
Exactly. And like you say, speaking of that plan, it's also very exciting that during that meeting, they did disclose that they were going to have a plan submitted to the CDC sometime before September 20th. So that is extremely exciting news, given that, that really makes November a viable option to start sailing.
Yeah, and it's really exciting to hear also that MSC, which is really kind of the guinea pig for all of this, they started cruising about 4 weeks ago. They've now had four different sailings without anyone contracting COVID, which is kind of proof. I mean, they were the guinea pig. They proved that they were ready, that they had things in place to make sure that the passengers are safe and sound. And they've proved that it is possible as long as you start it before anybody actually boards the ship.
Agree, and that's exactly what we needed. We needed someone to step up to the plate and show everyone who is either on the edge or against cruising at this point to show that it can be done. And I think they've hit it out of the park with this one because they've been so strict with their protocols and they came up with a perfect plan. And I'm sure many even heard that they even had to throw a family off the ship for breaking that social bubble that they call it.
Yeah, that's right. And you
And
know what?
It sounds harsh, but it's what's needed to keep
It,
it safe.
you're right. I mean, you can't play around. You can't be lax with this. You have to prove that it is safe because all it would take is for, a family to, infect someone else. And then all of a sudden we're back to kind of square one and then no one's able to set sail. But let's talk about some of the things that they did to implement people getting on board. So there were temperature checks, there are rapid COVID tests, and let's talk also about kind of what Royal Caribbean is doing. From what I've been hearing, they're going to stagger embarkation times, which I would imagine everybody's going to do. So for those of you who've maybe never set sail before, you might be told that you can arrive to the port at noon, and then everyone kind of arrives because everyone wants to get on the ship as quickly as possible, even though there are different methods to how you board a ship, right? So now you're
Right.
going to get a set time, and it might be even as late as 5 or 6 p.m. And I think that makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah, that makes tremendous sense because, these rapid COVID tests, as rapid as we want them to be, they're not quick enough for that so that everyone can arrive to the terminal at the same time. It can take up to 15 minutes to an hour, 2 hours to get your results back, depending, it's different for everyone. So I think it's perfect that it's spread out. And I don't care if I get on the ship at 10 p.m. as long as I know that I'm going out to sea that day.
Exactly. As long as you get on the ship and you know, obviously, that it's safe and that everyone else has been tested and that, you are pretty much safe, right? Because if no one has COVID on the ship, no one can really spread it,
Right.
right? So that's
Exactly.
awesome. And then I was going to say, MSC has actually, and we talked about this in a previous edition of Wrestling with Cruises, they had excursions where they were only excursions that were run by MSC, which were great because they were essentially controlling the environment. So you couldn't just get off of the ship and just kind of go anywhere and do anything like you normally would, which, I get it. It's a pro and a con. But listen, I much rather be on a cruise and be able to do some shore excursion than, not be able to cruise at all.
Right. And I think that's going to be the turning point for whether we start here in the United States or not, because it's the ports that, you don't have to worry so much about getting on the ship because you're starting in a port that's going to have protocols implemented. But when
Right?
you go to these outside ports, anyone can just, on a normal day, and I say that lightly, normal,
Yeah.
you could just walk off the ship and go anywhere you want, and then you come back before the time, before the ship sails. So, like you said with MSC, and this is where that family broke the social bubble. They wandered off from the group, and they just couldn't guarantee that they were safe to get back on the ship after wandering off. And I think that's going to be the number one thing when cruising restarts. You have to have control of where you
Hmm.
go on the island.
Yeah, and hopefully everyone kind of respect that because again, at the end of the day, all it's going to take is for something to happen somewhere, and then all of a sudden it can ruin kind of cruising for everyone. And I know that the cruise ship or the cruise industry has worked so tremendously hard to make sure that it is absolutely safe for everyone to enjoy cruising again. And there is a way to socially distance on a ship because again, most of the ships are rather large, and you got to think that a couple different things are going to happen. One, the ships are not going to be at full capacity, initially,
Hmm.
right? Two,
Right.
not every ship is going to sail. So with Norwegian, you're not going to get the entire fleet, that's going to be rolling out. You might get one or two ships, and that goes for pretty much everybody, right? We've heard that
Right.
that's kind of it's going to be staggered. So it's going to be tested. So you're going to have a couple of ships sailing, and then also I've heard that the itineraries might be shorter, which make perfect sense. It'd be great to have 1, 2, 3 day cruises just to kind of get
Right.
this so that they can get it kind of under their belt, and also it might make passengers feel a little bit more comfortable knowing, well, I'm only gone for a certain period of time. So, I'm excited about the potential of what we have the next couple of months. And you and I were really excited about this, the fact that we had been waiting for NCL to make an announcement because we thought for sure there's no way that they're going to sail in November. And we didn't get
Right.
any type of news in August. We haven't gotten any
Hmm.
news yet. And Norwegian has essentially basically said no news is good news, which means they're still
Yeah.
evaluating what's going on. And there's the potential that possibly they could return to cruising in November. How exciting is that?
You know, from like you said a few weeks ago, I was like, "There's no way that we're going to be sailing at all this year." But it just took a few weeks to make that change, and what they've been doing behind the scenes, what we can't see, makes the difference. Because, like I said earlier in that meeting, September 20th is right around the corner.
Right?
And if it takes a few weeks, even to get that plan approved by the CDC, that leaves the whole, quarter 4 open, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very exciting. And I would totally feel comfortable going on a ship knowing how stringent they're going to be about certain things, about the protocols, especially in the beginning to make sure that they get it right. I'm really excited about the possibility of getting on a ship, within the next couple of months. Dying to get back on as quickly as possible, as I'm sure you are. What, by the way,
Oh yeah.
is your next cruise that you currently have booked?
So the next cruise I currently have, I plan to be on is the Encore in December for New Year's.
Great.
So, I think that's going to
There's
be
hope.
the biggest cruise of the year.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. That's
Who
going to be
doesn't
the
want to
biggest.
sail out of 2020?
Great point. I didn't even think about
Oh
that.
yeah,
That's right. Yeah, everyone will be looking forward to sailing past 2020 onto 2021, especially on a ship.
exactly.
How very
And it would be great
apropos.
if you could do it on a ship.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially for you, who's always on cruise ships. This is what a better way to ring out 2020 than on a cruise ship. That's
Exactly.
fantastic. I would love to do that just for the sake of having that experience. I think it's bigger than like
Yeah.
Y2K in 2000. Remember 1999 and waiting to 2000? Like that was a big deal. I think this is even more of a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
Getting out of
When
2020.
you think about it, this year, it doesn't feel like it's been as bad as it is. We've been making the best out of it,
That's all we could do.
but when you really look at it, it's going to be a year for the history books, that's for sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So let's talk about some other good news. So Costa Cruises is returning this week, which is really great. I mean, MSC again has kind of pioneered the return, which is great. We were talking about AIDA; they're going to be making a comeback. Those are companies that typically sail in like Italy. I think MSC right now is sailing out of Italy, if I recall correctly, and they're only
Yep.
accepting passengers that are local, which makes perfect sense, little by little, step by step, right? I wonder too whether when we begin cruising again, I would imagine that the cruise lines that set sail out of the States, it'll be baby steps as well. I wonder if they will just initially start accepting passengers from the U.S. And what else they might implement, whether it is shorter sailings, modified sailings, and all of that stuff. Do you have any idea or any thoughts on that?
I think kind of like Italy, they're only accepting people from that county in Italy that the ship is sailing out of. So it's not even the entire country of Italy that can sail. You know,
Ah,
for example,
great
the
point.
MSC Grandiosa is sailing out of Genoa. So only the people in that general area are actually allowed to sail, because they still have some issues in Italy by, some parts of the country are better than others. And I think
Right.
that's what they're trying to prevent, is the spread from part to part.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Um, Speaking of sailing, obviously Nassau is such a big hub for sailing, right? And they are anxious to get cruising back. So they are now moving into phase 3 of reopening the country. Initially, they shut everything down. And they're essentially
Right.
saying that if you want to vacation in Nassau, you can do so, but you have to have a negative COVID test. And when you get there, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So you're essentially there for 2 weeks. And if you're booked at a resort, you're staying at that resort. You can enjoy all the amenities there, but you can't really travel outside of that resort. So
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see how and I would imagine that they would be one of the first ports to accept cruises based upon just the relationship that they have with the cruise industry,
hmm
right?
Yeah, I think, Nassau and the private islands are going to be two of the biggest places that these ships will go at first because, the cruise line can really control who goes on their island,
Right.
um, even more than Nassau. Even if you do the like kind of like the MSC shore excursions in Nassau, it's different. You can kind of go anywhere on the private islands given that it's a controlled environment by the cruise
Great
line.
point. Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's those private islands are perfect for this type of scenario because you could
Hmm.
essentially, I mean, listen, I'd get on a 5-day cruise just to go to Great Stirrup Cay at this point, or
Oh yeah.
um, uh, what's Harvest Cay or is it
Yep.
Harvest Cay? Yeah, or Harvest Key. I always get that confused.
Yeah, it's subjective.
K,
Say it
Key,
however you'd
either
like.
one, I will happily go there. But I'm just thinking it's a perfect place because, like you mentioned, it's a controlled environment. So that would be ideal if they just did the private islands. That'd be pretty cool. I'm really excited about that. Um, Also, something that I'm really excited about that I learned a little bit more about this week is the Royal Caribbean app and how incredibly robust it is and what they're doing with it. And you and I were talking, we're hoping that NCL kind of follows suit with this particular
Hmm.
app. So, with this app, not only can you potentially unlock your door and use it as a key card, which I think is so smart. I think that's awesome. And especially if you can use it with when you're on the ship, you use your key card to make purchases if you want to purchase something. Well, how great is it to be able to use your phone to be able to do that? But you'll also be able to potentially, I guess in some cabins, control your lights and control the blinds. So you'll touch less of things on the ship, which I think is brilliant. And I think you could even order food from it, which is so smart. So I'd really love to kind of see NCL implementing that because that seems like it could be really cool. And also, when you're checking in, you take your own picture. You could take a selfie of yourself using the app so you don't have to go through the whole check in process because, as you know, they take your picture before you board to put on your key card.
Right.
So now you can do that and you can just walk on the ship, which I think is absolutely brilliant. So I think there's a lot of advantages to utilizing this app.
Yeah, and you make a good point with the controlling things in your cabin. You don't think about it because it's not something that's always on the mind, but there's someone coming in after you to that same cabin. And even if it sounds silly that, oh, I don't need my phone to control my blinds in my cabin, if that's something less that you can touch in your cabin for the next
Right.
person, that's one
Yeah.
less thing that needs to be thoroughly cleaned, even though I'm sure they're going to be going all out at first.
Yeah, I would think so too. I got to imagine that the staterooms will be completely disinfected in every capacity. But
Yep.
even on the ship, it'd be great not to be able to have to handle menus. Maybe you do it on
Yep.
your phone. And it's so much more convenient, right? Sometimes you sit down and you're waiting for a menu. Well, if you already have it on your phone, you can already kind of pre
Exactly.
select what you want to order, which I think is really great. You can see entertainment. Maybe you can book everything from the phone so that you don't necessarily have to go down to see a concierge or go down to
Right.
the front desk or maybe even book shore excursions from it. There's really, I think, a lot of benefits to utilizing an app like that, which it just makes so much sense, especially in the day and age that we live in.
Oh, exactly. As of now, you can kind of do that all, like on the apps that are already out. So with the Norwegian, for example, you can right now book dining and everything you possibly can think of, shore excursions, from your phone. So to bring that up to the next level is going to be a huge help.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm wondering what else
A
they could
shore
possibly
excursion.
do because I love the idea of not having to wait to get your key card and you could take your own picture
Hmm.
and check in right there and then obviously go through whatever protocols and then get right on the ship because sometimes it can get a little backed up when you're trying to board. So I'm
Right.
really excited about the potential of utilizing apps to kind of enhance our cruise experience and then unlocking the door. That's just kind of a no brainer, I think. So way to go
Oh
for
yeah.
to Royal Caribbean for that. I think that that's such a brilliant move, and I really hope that the other cruise lines follow suit. And yeah, Norwegian's app is really cool. It's definitely been modified and keeps getting better and better. So hopefully, we'll be able to use that. Be able to use that soon as well.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
So in addition to the Royal Caribbean app, there's obviously um, so much more going on. We talked about the other cruise ships that are setting sail, and you talked about we were talking before about Celebrity and how they have two new ships. Right now, when did you say that they were going to come out?
So I know Celebrity has stated that when they do restart, hopefully by November 1st, along with Royal Caribbean, their parent company, that the Edge and the Apex will be the first two ships back in service when they finally start. So um, I know that there's some availability left through the end of the year. So if you're really gearing to get on a cruise, you might have a good chance with those two.
That's really cool, and they're out of Fort Lauderdale.
Yep, Fort Lauderdale.
Now, is the Apex a newer ship than the Edge, or is the Edge the latest?
The Edge came out in, I believe, 2018, but the Apex actually
Ah,
hasn't had passengers yet. It came out in
that's right.
April, so that was well into the pause.
Ah,
So
very
so it
cool.
hasn't had anyone on board yet, but it's been out for a few months.
So, what makes it unique?
There's from what I saw in pictures, it just looks incredible. We talk about all the new features that Norwegian comes out with, but the new celebrity ships actually has this thing called a magic carpet, and it's on the outside of the ship. It's that big orange structure that you see in pictures when you look them up, and it moves up and down the side of the ship, and it has like a bar and a sitting area. And on days that you need to tender, which can be tedious when you have to tender into a port, it
Absolutely.
it's supposed to make the process much easier. It goes down to water level, and they actually use their own tenders and board you from the magic carpet. So you have that nice seating area when you're waiting for a tender, and it just makes the whole process much smoother. And that's giving I have a tender port on my itinerary. I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Wow, that's super cool. What a great idea. I love how cruise lines find a way to solve just everyday problems of frustrations that we kind of have as passengers. Like, how can you make the tendering process, which is already tedious to begin with,
Exactly.
at least a little bit more enjoyable? So this sounds great. What a great idea.
Yeah, and you know how it's like being lined up down the hallways waiting to get onto a tender, and now they have this on the lowest deck next where you would get onto the magic carpet. It's called Destination Gateway, and there's like a bar there, and there's seating areas, and it just you can get a drink while you're waiting for the tender, and it just makes the whole process much nicer.
Wow, that's super cool. I meant to ask you because I had forgotten about this throughout this whole kind of craziness of the pandemic, but it was still continuing to be worked on. Did you hear that the new cruise terminal in Miami for NCL is finished?
Yeah, it's done and it's ready. It's just waiting now for cruising to restart, and it would be perfect timing to start up in November and break it in. It looks
Yeah,
great.
I'm really excited about that. From the renderings that I've seen, and even during my last sailing, passing by it and seeing it being built, it looks
Hmm.
like it's going to be phenomenal. So this is great because now, especially with the day and age that we live in, we kind of need more space in the terminals. And I think NCL is going to do a great job of making sure that we're as comfortable as humanly possible when we now board the ship.
Exactly.
So that's really cool, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of the new terminal, it was actually customly built for the new Leonardo classes that are coming out. And speaking of the Leonardo, we can expect to see more details and like what the ship is going to look like on the inside, even though there's already been some leaked pictures. But it's actually opening for booking the end of this month.
That's incredible. That is exciting. So when are we scheduled to perhaps see some more images? Do you have any idea?
I'm not too sure about the images, but I do know the bookings are supposed to be released somewhere around like the 25th. So, give or take a few days. And,
Wow.
that's really exciting. And I know I have a cruise next ready to put down on it to hold that first voyage.
Yeah, that's going to be great. And they have not announced where it's sailing or what the itineraries are or anything of that nature, right?
Nope, they're keeping us in suspense
Of course
until
they are.
the end of the month.
Of course they are. Well, that'll be super exciting news. Hopefully, it'll do the inaugural kind of route of hitting New
Hmm.
York and then Miami. Well, I would imagine because I believe that ship is going to be sailing out of Miami, right? I mean, I would imagine that it'll eventually hit New York, perhaps, in the winter or something like that. But I think it's supposed to be scheduled for Miami, right? Is that have you heard
They
that?
haven't officially said yet, but given that they just built that, big beautiful terminal in Miami,
Yeah.
we can probably assume that they're going to be making good use out of it with their new ship.
And when is it going to launch again?
It's supposed to be sometime in 2022 before this whole COVID situation. It was supposed to be June. So I think anytime in 2022 is fair game.
Right. Right. Man, 2022. It seems like so far away, yet,
Yeah,
thank goodness we're almost out of 2020 if you think about it, right?
exactly.
But that'll give us something
That's
to
all
look
I care
forward
about
to.
right now.
Yeah, yeah, that'll give us something really to look forward to and obviously talk about. And hopefully, within the next couple weeks, we'll be able to share some images because, yeah, there are, I think, two images or just one of what it looks like right now, and the interior looks. I don't even know how to describe it. Almost futuristic.
Yeah, it's so modern, and some mates might say it's like very, like you say, futuristic, and it just doesn't look like a typical Norwegian ship, which makes it really exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool to have something different. I mean, obviously, we love the Norwegian ships, but it is really kind of fun to have something new and different to look forward to because obviously with all of the newer NCL ships, they all kind of have the same formula in some way, in some capacity.
Exactly.
So when we hear something that's going to be completely different is out there. That's going to be really cool. And the fact that the itineraries will be different because since this is a smaller ship, they'll be able to maneuver this ship to different ports of call. So, like the
Right.
Encore and the Bliss and even the Escape are mega ships, so they can't necessarily go to places like
Right.
uh, uh, what is the one place that I've always wanted to go? Turks and Caicos. I've always wanted to go to Turks, but there's no NCL
Yeah.
ship that really sails there. So I have high hopes that we'll eventually be able to get there thanks to the new Leonardo class. So we'll see. Lots of stuff to look forward to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what if you could set sail to any destination right now on any ship? Where would you go, and what ship would it be?
Oh my. So of course it has to be on my favorite ship, the Escape, because that's just home. But I don't know if you remember, years ago in maybe 2005, 2006, they used to do overnights in Great Stirrup Cay. And
Oh,
I
okay.
know with this whole situation, that would be the perfect itinerary right now. Just to have an overnight on the island. They used to do midnight island buffets and
Right.
bonfires, and
Yep.
it used to be so much fun. And I think that would be the perfect thing to bring back now, even because, and it's easy to do. If you only have two, three, even four ships sailing, you can fit all of them easily there at some point in the week for an overnight.
Yeah, that's a really great point, especially with the new villas that they've created in Great Stirrup Cay with the around the lagoon.
Right.
There's so many different
Some of them
places
have
now.
bedrooms.
Yeah, exactly. So you could just camp out there overnight if you wanted to. That's a really great
Exactly.
idea. Wow. Hopefully,
Yeah.
NCL.
I wish they would bring it back.
Yeah, you're right. This would be the perfect time to do that. Even if they're going to do shorter cruises, that would be the ideal situation because you're on an island, so you can't really wander off to some place where you're going to
Right.
be in contact with some locals, right? You're just dealing with the people on the ship and then the employees who all have been tested, and it's like a safe environment, right? So, and what a controlled environment.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a brilliant
And
idea.
at that point in time, they didn't even have a tender dock, so the tender used to just pull up right onto the beach, which
Right.
adds to the fun.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, great idea. All right, I like that idea. I'm hoping that NCL hears you and implements that because that'd
Some of the
be
best sailings were those, and they
yeah.
did it right from New York too.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's awesome. I wouldn't mind doing that in in Harvest K as well because I love
Yeah.
it. It's man, they did a beautiful job with that over there in
Oh
Belize
yeah.
as well.
I agree.
So anyway, Robbie, well, listen, I want to thank you. Obviously, a lot of stuff to talk about this week. And for once, It's pretty much all positive news, so this is exciting. I think we're just going to continue to get even more better news as we kind of go along. So hopefully, within the next week or two, we'll be able to, well, not only obviously share information about the Leonardo class, which is exciting, but hopefully be able to talk about, well, we know when, our cruise lines are going to get back up and running officially and how that's going to work. So yeah, exciting times are ahead, right?
Absolutely, and we have to keep on the roll of good news.
For
Hopefully, in
sure.
the weeks coming, it's just all positive.
Yep, fingers crossed. So, Robbie, thank you so much for joining me and everybody out there. Thanks for watching. And yeah, make sure to stay tuned because I'm hoping that we will certainly have some more late breaking news as we go along here. I think that every week we get a little bit closer to stepping on board of our favorite cruise ships and get to once again returning to the cruise life, which we all know and love. So thanks again
Absolutely.
for joining us here, Robbie. Thank you. I appreciate it. Looking forward to having you back so we can chat some
Thanks
more.
for having me. It's always fun.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Hope everybody out there is staying safe, and we'll see you right here next week with some more Wrestling with Cruises. Take care, everybody.